Hello there and welcome once again. We're talking about mental health. We see people behaving, some will say rationally, some will say irrationally. But what really is in their mind, or what are the things disturbing them? Are they just happy? Are they under influence of anything at all? Some happiness, some influence of drugs, or just what is it? So we want to discuss mental health because we are told quite a lot of people also witness depression. And depression can be a killer to students, a killer to family members, a killer to those who are keeping peace here and there. My name is Ben Shaman, and you're on to Third Eye Africa TV. I have a guest that I'll say is a man of many ETCs. But permit me to welcome on board Dr. Peters Temitope Adeyanju. He's a lecturer with they call it Gowon University, Yakubu Gowon University. But it used to be Abuja University or University of Abuja. I want to welcome you to Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you very much, Uncle. Good afternoon, audience. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Thank you very much. And that done, what should the viewer understand by mental health?
Thank you very much, great Uncle. For our viewers in different parts of the world, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in America, wherever you're listening or watching this program, mental health is simply defined as a state of well-being of the mind of individuals. It actually defines your ability to be emotionally stable, psychologically stable, physically stable, to be economically stable, to be spiritually stable. So it's a state of completeness or well-being of the individual heart and state of mind. That is mental health.
Okay. So how will you now look at, let's situate it to Nigeria. Some people can live a fake happiness, a kind of, or being influenced by some things they have taken. So how do we situate that?
Thank you very much. Like if you listen to the initial definition I gave, it actually encompasses all. It does not really look at the way you feel at a point, at an instance. It is actually looking at your well-being, your state of well-being. In other words, physically, emotionally, psychologically, economically, spiritually, socially, your total well-being. And you see, actually, the two words that are actually conjugated together, mental and health. Of course, health has to do with the total well-being. That's correct. Mental is also referring to your mind, is referring to the individual in particular. So in relating that to Nigeria today, you can't deny certain fact that there is an old narrative that defines the influence that genetics as well as the environment has on individuals. You are genetically, influenced, or you are genetically defined and environmentally defined. The environment has influence on you. In like manner, the genetics also has influence on you. So in a situation where you allow the prevalence of the environmental factor to determine or define you, it's a different activity entirely. And if you allow your genetics, your biology to also define you, it's a different narrative entirely. But in Nigeria today, you see, there are multiplicity of issues or challenges that actually confronts an average Nigerian. Economically, there are economic issues. There is poverty that defines us. That's poverty that influences our sense of judgment. And you can also look at the fact that beyond looking at this, you may also look at other variables beyond the environmental factor. And all of these things defines us, like students on campuses, all right, be it even primary school, secondary school, the tertiary institutions, you have activities, academic activities, that actually they are beckoning at you. They demand your attention. They want virtually everything about you. And if you look at those, they can constitute stress and mentally affect your emotional stability, your psychological stability, your social stability. In that context, is simply referring to your relationship with others within your environment. Again, all of these things are facts. As humans, we daily interact, we daily meet with people, and our relationship with people can be defined by what we're passing through, what actually is overwhelming us, and is having, a very big influence or impact on us. To that extent, it can affect your stability emotionally, psychologically, physically. And in that context, we then begin to look at the issue of mental stress and its degenerative effects. Of course, it can be solved. I think I'll pause here a little to take more questions.
Exactly. Now, these problems you've listed, especially when it comes to students, in terms of some have challenges, even with accommodation, transportation, assignments here and there, lectures here and there, and the stress level, and at the point some people will begin to go into some depression, So how do we situate depression in this context, students and crisis here and there?
Thank you very much, moderator, anchor, and to our esteemed audience. In specific now, let's talk about the students. The primary duty of a student is to study. And for me, these are perspectives. For me, students should, to a large extent, not call their primary duty a burden, not at all. If you are asked to study, if you're asked to read, if you're asked to actually ensure that you do well in your studies, it's not a burden, but in reality, it's a task you must accomplish. But we cannot deny certain facts, that it could be at sometimes be overburdensome. It could demand much of your time. It could actually, create a form of engagement that keeps you away from your social activities. And if you're not mindful of that, to a very large extent, the moment you give it all of your time, of course, stressors begin to come in. Stress factors begin to come in. Now, the brain, as you study, you are reducing the glucose level in the brain. Okay, fatigue will come in, stress will come in. Before you know what's happening, if you're not careful too, all of these things, biologically or medically, can lead to other things, It can even lead to loss of memory, loss of concentration. You see, that's where the emotional stability comes in, psychological stability comes in, physical stability. Imagine you have read beyond the normal. If you have to read for 2 hours at a go, and you're reading for 6, 7, 8 hours on a stretch, obviously, physically, you've exhausted yourself. And mentally, you've also created more challenge for the brain to actually contend with. Now, all of these things can degenerate further. It can create a problem if you are not careful. Of course, you've heard of students, even when they are preparing for examinations, you hear that they collapse, they fall down. Some of them can faint. And even sometimes you go to the exam hall, you can be blank. It is because you have overburdened the brain. You did not manage your time well. You did not give time to rest. I'll pause here a little again to take more questions.
Yes. Now, you see, yes, these are with the academics, but there could be some other issues bothering such a student, probably some family issues, some friends we've had some students because they said they've been ditched by a friend. They hoped they were going to marry, and we begin to see that they go into some self-injuries, taking some medication to kind of take their life, So how do we begin to manage this kind of youths, not to fall victims of this kind of?
Thank you very much, Anchor, and to our esteemed audience. You see, the quality of the knowledge you acquire over time defines your personality, and it can also enhance your personality. It can actually help you overcome many challenges. Again, we appreciate the fact that this is a topic at this time, because globally and in Africa and in Nigeria, there could be really challenging times. There could be issues to contend with. And like the Anchor rightly positioned or situate things, for individuals who go beyond the students, now when you have relationship issues and other variables comes in, economic stress, financial challenges, you could have other issues relating to accommodation, employment issues, relationships, and stuff like that. Now, this is the fundamental. Let's make reference to a great scholar. His name is called Rene Descartes. Now, looking at his philosophy on the concept of cogito ergo sum, and this is one of the old slangs, concepts I'm known for on campus those days. You see, what he actually posited is that doubting all doubtables. You see, you should come to learn that as you advance in life, you need to learn to depend less on people. Do not be over-dependent on people or situations. There is the likelihood that over-dependence on people, the moment they fail or falter, then you can begin to contend with your own health, your emotions, your mind, your physical being, your other parts of you. Now imagine the issue of a dear friend, intimate friend, jilting you or turning down an offer or creating an issue of worry for you. It is because you have over-depended on them. You over-relied on them. You have given them too much of your confidence, and here they are, and they are humans. They are bound to fail. That's correct ideology. Not that they will always fail, but humans are finite, humans are limited, and we are natural. We are not supernatural. We are not superhumans. We are not infinite in our orientation, in our disposition, and as we relate with people, you have to integrate these variables in. That humans, just like machines, can actually fail. So in that context, worry less when they actually fail. That will help you manage your emotion well. Of course, it's normal. I expected that somehow. If it happens, I've got to move on. I've got to make meaning out of my life. And let me share this. There is no justified or tenable reason that is sufficient to disturb you, to make you degenerate into a level of emotional instability. As issues of life comes, as life presents itself, please move forward. See it as a stepping stone. Good lesson to learn from. From every experience you're to learn, like Thomas Edison rightly say, he never failed when he made attempts to make a discovery about electricity. No, but that he discovered new ways and methods and approach on things. So see it as an avenue to learn and make progress in life. Thank you very much, Uncle.
Yes, make progress alive. Now, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, they're now proposing that by next month, students might be made to go into some tests over drugs, because to them there are some irrational behaviors they are seeing in students. Good move? You think it's a good move?
Yes. very, very good and very, very correct and well acceptable. And let me share this for the purpose of knowledge and for the purpose of a record. University of Abuja has started this 2 sessions ago. You cannot, by any means, come into the university as a student to learn, to be admitted without going through that. And you go through it. And I remember on one of the occasions, I actually accompanied a student who happened to be my own daughter too, to the NDLA office here in Abuja. They will take a urine from the student, not for urinalysis as it is in medicine, but they want to find out drug content. And they will issue out a certificate that you are clear from drug-induced or related issues. And let's make it very clear. Drug, it's not an option for survival. Now, if you have needs to get all this drug, steroids and stuff like that, it will not help you. That's the truth. And in the context of our discussion this afternoon, it's true. Of course, if we go a little medical, there's what we call the steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, the NSAIDs, and the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Okay, good, the SAIDs and the NSAIDs. What you call opioids and non-opioids, or you call them opiates. All right, yes, they have inducing effect. Yes, they could either induce the brain or induce the heart. So they have sympathetic actions. But let's get it very clear. They are not an option for our youths today. Drug is a no-no. If the university finds out that you test positive, of course you will lose your admission. Get that very clear. You will not get the admission. I can tell you of that of the University of Abuja. You can't be admitted because you found yourself guilty and you've established for yourself a prima facie why the university should not give you the admission. Now, what you think drug will do for you is possibly to alter your behavior and make you behave irrational. And if you have listened to the words of Ellis, there's what we call the Ellis irrational therapy. All right? The assumption is that these drugs will help you solve an issue. It doesn't. Rather, it gives you a wrong approach to real issues of life. Drug is no-no. Do not go into drug. It will alter your behavior. And that's what, sorry for using that word drug again. All right, okay, but these are common languages you will understand better, and that's why we're using it. All these pharmaceutics. Now, let's get it very clear. See, drug has the capacity to alter your behavior. That's what it does. It alters human behavior. So you take it for the case of medications, medically prescribed, medications. It is to improve your health. But for students on campus, then the question will be, I have an health issue. The question is it medically prescribed? If not, it's an abuse of the drug. Of course, there are issues of drug resistance today, and most of the vices, social vices you find on campuses, it is easily traceable to abuse of these medications, what you call drugs. And they are not only pharmaceutically or synthetically built ones, there are also local ones. You know that as students. You have many names for them. Of course, to you, it's for a purpose you're taking it, but it's not good for your health. Like a teacher will say in the medical class, as you take them, it destroys your body cells and tissues. Common of this is the liver and the kidney. The lungs are also damaged. Don't deceive yourself. Like you've popularly been seeing it on the tobacco adverts and also on the sales materials, that smokers are liable to die young. That's very correct. It destroys the whole of your respiratory problems system. It doesn't help you at all. The liver, of course, you can have liver cirrhosis, you can have damages, hepatization can set in. Even the kidney, you can have so many renal-related problems. You do not take drugs. You don't take drugs. Don't consider it, and avoid friends who introduce you to stuff like that. Keep a distance away from them. Thank you very much, sir.
Now, when you were counting all of this, I remember when we were in AVU in the 80s, you just see that some people will say, look, I need to take this tablet to stay awake so that I'll read and read and read. You know, just taking all of this actually assists to absorb what you're reading.
Thank you very much, Anchor, and our audience again. I need to share this very clearly. Again, knowledge is good. Knowledge is wealth. Can I make it clearer for you? Knowledge is health. Health. Knowledge keeps you healthy. Knowledge makes you rich. It helps you to take informed decisions. Ensure that this you're learning, you share with your friends. Popularly among campus students is the intake of or consumption of caffeine. You know, in honesty, the question is, some, it keeps them awake, and all of these things are not true. They are not true, honestly. You know, I wish it's more of a clinical discussion. I would have bogged you down with some clinical issues. You know, I would have loved to go into some of the physiology, all right, just like we have the physiology of sleep. You know, in the human body, there are two specific hormones. One of them is called the serotonin, and the other one is called the adrenaline. Now, you see, the serotonin, whenever it's in the blood, it actually, you know, helps you to sleep. That's the physiology of sleep. And whenever it's decreasing and adrenaline is increasing, then alertness comes in. So we call that adrenaline, you know, the hormone for alertness, for fright, for flight. There are things you literally will not be able to do. But when there is increased adrenaline in the blood, wow, you can do even far beyond your comprehension. Now, let's get this clear. Now, some of these medications, some of these, what you take, all right, by whatever name you call them, to keep you awake, like the case of caffeine, for instance, no. That's not the right thing to do. Allow your body to function within its normal physiological parameters. The physiology is the normal functioning of the body. The body has the capacity on its own to manage itself and keep itself healthy. Just imagine the heart. That is the only machine in the whole world that never ceases to work for as long as you live. If a man lives for 100 years, the heart has functioned for 100 years without a stop. The day the heart ceases to work, that day the person becomes dead. So you see, physiologically, you see, there's what you call decompensation and compensation. The body can compensate for everything. So if, for instance, you need to study, preparing for an examination, you don't need to take anything, be it steroidal or non-steroidal, to induce or to possibly create an avenue where you keep awake, be alert. That's not true. It's all fictitious. It's all fictitious. It's not correct. You're only just living in delirium or in deception. Some person say, but I've been taking it. Now let me tell you the most complicating part. Now remember, you're growing older. The danger is because you've kept altering the system from its normal function. A time will come, the body will demand far beyond you can compensate for. You've seen people with tremor. You've seen people with so many other issues. It's as a result of the accumulation of some of those things you've been taking over time. Of course, the liver does detoxification function. But in the instance where most of these things, when they are synthetic, the body cannot metabolize them at all times. So those residues create medical complications. You will pay for it. Why not solve the problem now? Stop taking those stuff. It doesn't really work for that purposes. Thank you.
Yes. In criminology, there's this theory, rational choice theory. Some people feel they can select to go into criminology, not minding the consequences. And that brings to mind the issue of politicians and corruption. They feel, look, even when they've seen former governors being tried, ministers being tried, they still feel they must go into it, you know. And we also seen that there was a time the chairman of the NDLA, Brigadier General Buba Marwa, was saying that politicians too must have to undergo this kind of a test. Is it feasible?
Very much feasible. Thank you very much. Yes, Uncle. Honestly, I'm glad. We're actually addressing issues that has the capacity to degenerate the fabrics of the society. Now, let's look at it this way. Yes, from the theory you actually cited, for those of us who are criminologists, please permit me to say that I'm multidiscipline. I'm also a criminologist, okay? I'm a sociologist and a criminologist too, all right? Now, let's look at it within the context of criminology. Yes, crime, as defined by criminologists, is, and even conventionally all over the world, is any act that contravenes the criminal law. It actually attracts punishment because it breeds social deviance, non-conformist. So the idea is that looking at the rational choice theory, okay, you have choices in the multiplicity of alternatives. You choose to do what is wrong. Yes, some persons are not tried and then you feel as if they're doing well within the society. Now let's get back to reality. And sometimes, like someone will ask, is it medically healthy that an individual will want to siphon, will want to hold to himself the resources of a whole state, of a nation? You see where politicians have wealth. I want to give credit to General Buba Marwa, retired, on the fact that I can categorically say, to his credit, the number of persons and the number of these illicit drugs that have been caught, arrested, these narcotics, the number of arrests, the number of some of them that have been, at different points. And I remember one particular incident in Lagos, that a whole structure, and that was the ever biggest catch in Nigeria, to his credit, meaning his intelligence, scope is very, very sharp. Nigerians celebrate you. Even if the politicians do not give credit to you, please, you are building a healthy nation. You see, posterity will judge you well. I've never met you before, but I want you to know that Nigerians appreciate you. We read your antecedents. Of course, we remember the old time when you were in Lagos, stood there. But let's get back to reality. Politicians too should be subjected to drug test. It's not normal. It is pathological. It is pathology. Of course, for those in medicine, they understand physiology is normal. Pathology is abnormal. Grossly, we can tell when we see pathological lesions. Histopath, you can also see histologically when there are pathologies, deviations from normal. It is not normal when you begin to see a single politician beginning to take pride in the wealth he or she possesses, regardless of wherever you find yourself. In this instance, be it at the federal, at the state, or at the local government, you're saddled with responsibilities. You're given, please understand the concept of social contract. It is assumed that this is our country, Nigeria. We all can't be in the office at the same time. On the basis of social contract theory, we are only saying that kindly go and represent us. In representing us, we are asking you in confidence, hold our resources, our national resources, our state resources, our local government resources, be it as a councillor, as a local government chair, members of the State House of Assemblies, the governors and their cabinets, and those at the federal, the president inclusive, with all humility, and members of his cabinets, and those in the upper legislative arm and the lower legislative arm, the Federal House of Reps members, and then the senators, those in the red chamber. What we're simply saying is, it is not normal when you begin to have resources far beyond words can express, and you pride yourself in that. it isn't LD. So on that premise, for instance, when the patient appears before a medical doctor, he takes into history of the patient. Then he further goes into other laboratory examinations. Why is he doing that? It's for the purposes of diagnosis. Be it a tentative diagnosis, a differential diagnosis, or a definitive or confirmatory diagnosis. Now, what we are simply saying is that as those who are citizens, we don't see it as normal. And you also know it's not normal. So when you begin to see pathology, what do? You call for further examination. So when you see politicians in that context, having excessive wealth, misusing fund, sometimes it will not be wrong to say they are being induced by steroids. They are being induced because you wonder some of their actions and inactions in public space, the manner of expressions, and you want to ask further, will a normal person do this? Of course, let's put it in proper perspective. Were you doing this before you became a public office holder? Maybe not. How many cars do you possess? Do you have? How many houses do you have? These are indicators. These are indices for measuring the pathology, for reasons to justify why politicians should go for
Yes.
this test. Thank you.
These are the reasons why these politicians should go for these tests. Now we'll come to some other issues, especially the farming of cannabis. Very common in some parts of this country. Some other countries have decided to make it legal. Some people are saying, look, we can take Indian hymns like vegetable soup, but the Nigerian laws are saying no. We'll come to all of that. And you're on to Third Eye Africa TV. Our guest is Dr. Peters Temitope Adeyanju of the Yakubu Gowon University in Abuja. Talking of University of Abuja. My name is Ben Sherman. Let's go on break. Welcome back from this break, and we were talking about farming of some, let me call them substances too, Indian hymns, como we say banga, ganja, wheat, all sorts of names. But why is it that some people have turned farms where ordinarily we should have maybe rice farms, groundnuts and all that, cassava, they've turned it into wheat farming? I mean, what's the attraction?
Thank you very much. You see, I always like to situate things within the reach of knowledge. Knowledge is very, very big. It's so big, very big. Now, you see, you may wish to also want to ask, what are those factors that is necessitating that? Of course, there are factors that actually promote that. Now, in your presentation, sir, the anchor, some countries approves of it, some countries do not. Nigeria do not approve of it. And I remember many years ago, I worked in Okiogo in Oyo State. There are axes, along the Okiogo side, from Ishayin, for instance, as you navigate towards Shaki, for instance. Now you see there are some plants, some farm, and good enough, the government of Nigeria do not in any way condone that. So the moment it's flashed, the moment it's identified, there is a raid, and then those farms are actually, cleared off. Now, people who go into that, let's look at the words of R.K. Martin, Robert King Martin, when he talked about the anomy theory, right? Now, the idea here is, sometimes we have a society where everybody is expected by the rule of law to live within the rule of law. But imagine instances where certain category of persons, maybe youths or adults, who over the years have gone to school, and somehow to them, they suddenly realize that after gaining knowledge, having certificates, and there are no gainful employment. And that's what R.K. Martin is saying. Now, when the society now, if you have conformed to an extent and you are not gainfully employed, you're not getting the benefit of such activities you've labored for. And the society is also demanding from you. And by inference, you have commitment. So what you need to do to those category of persons, they look for alternative ways to want to gain employment, generate fund, and also meet up societal demand. Now, those who do that possibly is for economic empowerment, to get economic benefit, to get economic fund money to survive, because they have demands. Maybe they do not get gainful employment. Gainful employment. In this context, we're referring to maybe you graduate from a college of education, from a polytechnic or a monotechnic, from a university, and you don't get a job, and you've got to survive. You've got to look for means to attend to your needs. They go into that. And to them, that's viable, and that is an opportunity or a means to get fund. Now, the best we want to give on this platform is that the only means of survival? The answer is no. Anything, of course, within the context of law, anything that is not in consonance, that is not in agreement with the law, to the extent of its inconsistency, is null and void. Anything that is not rationally accepted, that is not accepted, that is not right, it does not matter the amount of explanation you provide for it. To that extent of its inconsistency, to normality, is abnormal. It's not acceptable. So farming of wheat, farming of, you call it ganja, you call it banga, or you call it any name. Don't do it. If the law catches you, if the law catches up with you, you will not be excused. And there are no ignorance in law. You will definitely dance the music you have played the tune for. Thank you.
Now, we are getting very close to the end of this interview, but let's again visit our campuses. The presence of it or lack of it, psychologists to manage students. Are we talking of campuses, or do we have campuses where psychologists have been employed? I'm not talking of lecturers. I mean, you have psychologists employed to begin to monitor students' conduct.
Thank you very much, Anchor, and to our esteemed audience. Please, let's gain. The knowledge here is for the aged, the middle age, the early old age, and the old age, because you are not also immune. We had research that proves that. And to those who are also not youths but are adults, and even children, terribly and worrisome, even those in primary schools are not immune. Those in secondary schools, be it junior secondary or senior secondary, they are not immune. But let's look at the focus on campuses. Remember, colleges of education, the monotechnics, the polytechnics, the universities, be it private university or public university. Now, for me, it's a privilege to share with you that University of Abuja, for instance, we have the Department of Guidance and Counseling as a course of study. And we also have a counseling unit where if you have needs, you can go and seek for counseling. And you'll be guided right, you'll be counseled right. But the question is, do we have psychologists, with clinical psychologists, for instance, whose primary duty is that they've been engaged or employed to provide psychological welfare for our students on campus? Now, I'm going to say it this way, that universities should have an office just like you have the counseling department, counseling office, specialized to provide counseling. there should be an employed psychologist there who is a trained psychologist. Of course, I remember as a teacher too in psychology class, there are 4 things psychologists do. Number 1 is to be able to identify certain behavioral traits. Number 2, they provide explanation to them. Number 3, they can describe. And number 4, they help modify. When they see some misnomals, they can help you modify, solve those problems. For instance, we're talking about those who are drug addicts. There are modifications. Psychologists are trained to do that. Now, we need to have psychologists on all our campuses, in all private-owned schools. Again, from primary to secondary to the tertiary institution, but those in the tertiary institution, we need them. Not only do we need psychologists, we also need social workers. Let me say it very clear. We need, just the way as essential as the medical clinics are, where there are medical issues, we also need to have offices designated, employed guidance and counselors there. We need an office for the psychologist. We need office for social workers. These are trained persons who are there to address all of our social needs, address social issues. The increase in the social vices on our campuses, ranging from cultism, drug addiction, examination malpractice, intimate partner violence, sexual-based violence, or what you call the SGBV, sexual and gender-based violence, and all of these things can best be addressed if professionals who fear God are employed, and the more these persons go into carrying out their duties, you see, we will have informed a larger population of our students on campus such that they will not be easy, prey for these perpetrators of this evil and easy persons who can influence them. We need psychologists on our campuses. We need social workers on the campus. We need guidance and counselors on our campuses, trained and employed. Thank you.
And the last one. The Anglican Communion in Nigeria has decided to sever its relationship with the Anglican Communion in the Wales because an openly lesbian lady is now a bishop and head of the church. Nigeria is saying no, it's bye-bye to that. Should I call it rubbish before I get crucified by some people who believe in it? So what's your take on that?
Thank you very much. Nigerian problems are multifaceted. There are many. The human problem all over the world, they are multifaceted. And let me please borrow from our original scholars. From the days of Aristotle down to the days of Plato and the days of Socrates, and all very prominent scholars that I can mention more than 100 of them, ranging from Pentalozzi, Erickson, and Piaget, John Piaget, and all of them. Now, most of them are multidisciplinary. They are not single-honored person. Why do I bring all of this? For instance, you're going already theological. I'm also a theologian. If you look at church history, this is not the first time. From church history, if you look at the rise of the indigenous churches in Africa, of course, from historical narratives, we understand that there was a time, religion, like I advanced and argued, African traditional religion is our own tradition and our own religion in Africa. If you look at the Islamic religion, it came in through the Foot Toro and the Foot Jalon, that is the Trans-Sahara route from the north. If you look at the coastal route, and that is where the so-called Western religion come into, the Christian religion. And we remember the antecedent of the 1814 Niger expenditure, the likes of William Wilberforce, when he stood before the British Parliament and argued for the abolishment of the slave trade. Now, very briefly, let's make the knowledge clear. Now, as we discuss the abolition of the slave trade, many repertoires came back to Africa. And we remember the narrative in Freetown in Sierra Leone and all of that, but very concisely, if you look at the rise of the indigenous churches, post the Second World War, now there was global epidemic, there was also a global pandemic, and there's also a global economic recession. So most of these foreigners returned back to their homeland. And then the indigenous people, when they were going, they locked up these religious homes. And then the people now began to worship God in their own way. One of the notable ones is the De-Apostolic Church. Originally, it is the De-Apostolic Church. I will have want to go into the colonial activities and all of that. But very notably, the Apostolic Church in the America had to sever ties with the Apostolic Church in Nigeria on doctrinal issues. And these are the basics too. All right? And the transformation of the Apostolic Church and how it became Christ Apostolic Church. But this is a public space to learn. Now, if you look at the Anglican Communion today saying, of course, the issue of the LGBTs, the lesbians, the gays, the bisexuals, the transgenders, and the neuters, these are socially made or socially constructed issues or words. They are not good for the human society. We can look at it from historical antecedents and historical narratives, but they are not normal. Why are they not normal? They are not normal because in the original, they are not there. Either by true cosmetic surgery, you are already reconstructing yourself. The issue of transgender and the cisgender, they are not the normal. They are what you constructed. So for the fact that within your diction, you constructed them to suit your will and your wishes. Now, those who still live within the normals, like those of us here in Nigeria now, what we're simply saying is that we have the normal. We are going to live within the normal. So those who have introduced the abnormal, and that's where the queer theory also comes in. You see, when the normals is no longer projected, is no longer celebrated, abnormal suddenly becomes normal. So in those clans, in those environments now, the abnormal is becoming normal to them. So those of us who still love the normal life, we are now saying that no, it can't be. So in that context, we should not in any way want to say that the Anglican Communion in Nigeria have done wrong. They've not done wrong. They are still within the normal, rational, simple, and believable thought of reasoning. So over there, it's right to say and to state their own position. The Christ Apostolic Church did it. The Anglican Communion is doing it. And even the federal government of Nigeria did it during the time of Obama, when there was the issue of what do you do when there are funds to access. Now, I deliberately mention a name because I need to make it very clear. There is no Western power that has any form of power that transcends its territorial boundary. Nigeria is a sovereign nation, and as a sovereign nation, we can take decisions for ourselves.
And probably that was why Goodluck Jonathan ensured that there's a ban on gay marriage, same-sex marriage, and all that stuff. Excellent. And Obama was not happy.
He doesn't need to be happy. He is limited to his territory. Nigeria is a sovereign nation. 1st October 1960, Nigeria became an independent nation. And on 1st October 1963, we became a republic. Not minding, we had the Fourth Republic today. In 1960, that was our first republic. In 1979, we had the Second Republic. In June 12, 1993, we had the Third Republic, though aborted. But since 1999, May 29th, we're in the Fourth Republic, and we will continue to be democratic. But that's what we have chosen to.
To end it, let's remember our own General Murtala Mohammed. He said, Africa has come of age. Yes. Nobody, therefore, will detect to it what it wants. And it is at this point that we have to end this program, Mental Health. We've had it all. We've viewed him, we've seen him. I'm talking of Dr. Peter Temitope Adeyanju, a lecturer with the Yakubu Gowon University in Abuja. Talking of University of Abuja, which has just been changed. We want to thank you for coming to Third Eye Africa.
Thank you very much, our anchor and our audience, the management of the Third Eye Africa. It's a privilege, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks very much.
My name is Ben Shaman, as usual. Thank you for watching. Let's do it again. Thank you and bye for now.